It is a brand new month. That means it is time to review some movies from the month of February 2021. Welcome to another month of new movies that I had seen the previous month. And we're going to talk about some February movies that I watched. And February was actually quite a good month. I mean, we had quite a bit coming out. March is going to look very promising. We have Kong vs. Godzilla, the Justice League Snyder cut, which is going to be amazing, which I'm going to cover a lot on this channel. I like to make this video specifically for smaller films. I like to do individual videos for bigger films like Kong vs. Godzilla and others. So this is more for those kind of small movies that don't really have that big of a crowd or big of an audience. They're kind of more obscure, maybe a little bit more independent. So if you guys like this type of content, make sure you hit that thumbs up button down below. Please go drop a like. Also subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Let's get it started with the first movie I want to talk about in February. The first movie I want to talk about from the month of February is Malcolm and Marie. This movie stars Zendaya and John David Washington. This movie was directed by Sam Levinson. This is about a boyfriend and girlfriend who come home from a movie premiere, as the boyfriend is a successful writer and director, and tensions start to flare as personal conflicts start to happen based on things that happened during the movie premiere and things that didn't happen during the movie premiere. And that's really what it is. It's an isolated film. It takes place over the span of a few hours, and it's really about the conflict and trauma of one relationship. How two people depend on each other without being too dependable, if that makes sense. John David Washington is a guy I've really admired a lot. BlacKkKlansman, he was phenomenal in that movie. Tenet, he was fantastic, even though, you know, they could have done more with his character. And I was very excited to see him in the movie. But to me, the rising star of this film is Zendaya. Zendaya is incredible. She's one of my Hollywood crushes, I'm not even gonna lie. And also, I just find her to be one of the best actors working today in Hollywood. Anything from Euphoria to even The Greatest Showman, which is even the greatest narrative film, or even the Spider-Man movies. I think what she brings to the table is something very unique. And I think that she has a craft unlike a lot of newer people working in Hollywood today. And she's also very young and very talented, and that's very obvious. And Sam Levinson, the guy who brought Euphoria to life, who Zendaya also works with in that show, he wrote and directed this film that Zendaya kind of pitched to him in a way. They shot it all during quarantine, which was insane. And you could feel that. You could feel it was a very close set. You could feel that it was very personal, and there's only a few people there. It feels like a very isolated movie, and it feels in itself like a quarantine film without actually kind of referring to being quarantined. So I really liked all that. Let's talk about the things that I loved about this movie. The first thing I loved is the performances. Zendaya gives the best performance of the year. I don't think there's one performance to me that I thought was better than what Zendaya does here. I think she won herself an Oscar. There's a couple of monologues that she gives in this movie that are breathtaking, that are emotional, and you feel every single word that she says. And I think that she has to be considered the favorite right now for Best Actress at the Oscars, and I'll be rooting for her because she does a phenomenal job in this movie. John David Washington also gives a really good performance. I think he might have a harder time at trying to kind of be nominated for the Oscars for his performance in this film, but I think that he does enough here to really show his acting prowess and the fact that the Washington name is one to hold in high regard because, man, Denzel, he's coming for you. I mean, he's really good and he's very talented as well. They have interesting chemistry because we know that he's like 10 years older than Zendaya, but like you feel like in a way they're around the same age. Like you feel like their maturity is kind of at the same level, and they're able to connect with one another on a different type of basis than I've seen with other couples on screen. And it actually works. It flows really nicely, although they have their issues like every couple, and they reach their boiling points. They never truly simmer out to where you feel like these two characters aren't meant for each other in some type of capacity or some type of way. The problem is I think they just don't understand what the other one is saying, and they don't have very good communication between the two, which I found to be riveting. The next thing I loved about this movie is I love that this film was shot in black and white because I think it paints an interesting portrait and an interesting perspective on what we view a relationship as. And I think that using the black and white palette does something that's more personal. It does something to show that this movie is very different and it's outside of the box, but also it's very orthodox. It's not truly unorthodox. It feels like it's something that was from like 1950 and it's just now placed into this time period in the 2020s. And I love that. I digged it. I thought that the movie did a really good job of adding layers to these characters. And even though the movie's about one specific argument, one specific thing that they argue about throughout the entirety of the film, it never truly feels like they run out of things to talk about. Like, it feels like things escalate even farther and you learn more about why these characters are the way that they are and why they're feeling the way that they feel. The last thing I want to talk about that I really loved is that Sam Levinson's direction in this movie is really good. I felt like it was told from a perspective that felt personal enough to him and to certain things that he's had to go through in his life. And I respected that. And I love that art. I love the fact that he feels like he's genuine with this telling of this story. And it's only a movie that it feels like would be right from his perspective. And you could tell that he truly had a craft and he worked with these artists, these actors, for such a small, limited time and under a small budget and really under a small production. He was able to do a lot and pull off a lot in this film. And it says a lot about not just a couple or a relationship, but as society as a whole, how we view people. Also, this is a big, giant middle finger to critics. And I think a lot of critics don't like that, but I actually kind of like that it's very bold in that way. So critics, yeah, stop taking yourself seriously. This is why the movie has certain things said about the critics, okay? Because you don't know how to take a joke. It's funny to me how this movie basically says criticism is important. You should also like let other people evaluate you. And critics don't do that. They like to criticize other people's work, but when other people criticize their work, it's the worst thing that you could ever do in the world. It's hypocrisy. That's really what it is, and I loved it. I love that the movie really went for it. It was bold. They didn't care who they were going to make mad, and I digged it. The only thing I didn't like, the only nitpick I have about this movie is that even though, like I said prior, that I like the argument and the fact that there's so many layers to this argument, it does feel like sometimes that they just kind of have a circular argument going on. Like, these characters get mad at things that happened 20 minutes back. And so it's like, is that really an important point anymore? Not really. It kind of feels like these two characters are unlikable at times because they don't understand what the other one is saying and they don't really know how to interpret their feelings in a better and more conducive way between these two characters. And if they were able to do that and pull that off, I feel like I would have connected a little bit more with these characters and had actually maybe even felt bad for some of the things that they were going through during this movie. But guys, this is a really solid film. I really enjoyed Malcolm and Marie. I was very excited for this movie, and with good reason. I think it's a movie that will be talked about for quite a while. I think it will make its way into the awards discussion, especially for Zendaya's performance, and also maybe some technical awards, because I mean, what they were able to do was mastery, in my opinion, with what they had. Also of what type of year 2020 was. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Malcolm and Marie. What did you guys think about this movie? Let me know down below in the comment section of this video. And let's move on to the next film. So the next movie I want to talk about is Tom and Jerry. This movie premiered on HBO Max and was in theaters at the same time. And I watched it. Now, I went into this movie knowing full well what this movie was going to offer me. Tom and Jerry is a beloved cartoon about a mouse and a cat that consistently fight, and usually the mouse always gets the better of Tom the cat. And in this movie, we see them in real life, but they're still animated in the way, in the style of the classic cartoon and animation. Obviously, that's upscaled. And they're living in New York City. They're both looking for a place to live. Jerry moves into a hotel, and soon a character played by Chloe Grace Moretz has a new job because she basically conned her way onto the job, and her first task is to take down Jerry and remove him from the hotel. She recruits Tom to help her out as they are trying to make sure that this huge A-list type of wedding is going to run smoothly. And I knew what this movie was going to be. I expected this movie to be really not great, but like, I wanted to have a good time. And I will say this, the movie falls flat on its face. It's not very good. It doesn't really pay homage and doesn't really understand the lore of Tom and Jerry and what these two characters mean in cinema. And so for me personally, I felt like this movie just really was teetering on trying to put in the sensibilities and the humor of the original classic cartoon, but also trying to kind of be something different and new. And to me, it doesn't really work that way. You can't have these two characters that are polar opposites always fighting on the fighting end. You can't have these two characters all of a sudden try to basically become friends and basically try to settle their differences, because that just doesn't really pay homage to the fandom. And I get that this movie was targeted for kids. I'm not the right demographic for this film. I found this movie to just kind of be lazy. It felt sloppy. It felt like something I've seen before. And I don't understand why they chose to do the Tom and Jerry traditional animation alongside the everyday, fast-paced live action of New York City. It didn't make sense to me because all the animals were like cartoonish and animated. The live action humans just kind of didn't mind it at all. Like, it was just like second nature. I guess it's how animals are. I don't get what the idea was there. I don't know why you just don't have this entire movie be animated. In my opinion, I think that would have served the movie better, because this just wasn't really doing it in the way that it should have, if that makes any sense. Now, I can't say that this movie was a total loss. Like, I did have some bit of fun with it at times, because there is some of that nice Tom and Jerry dynamic and that fun relationship. But I just can't get behind a movie that doesn't understand, number one, its style. Number two, it doesn't understand the characters it's trying to portray on screen. And number three, it's a movie that just, to me, felt like it was teetering. It never really understood what it was doing. The tone would shift constantly. And even the characters of Tom and Jerry didn't really live up to what we know them to be. And so that was a little upsetting to me. Tim Story directed this movie. Like, what happened to Tim Story, I don't know. But he has to make movies like this now. Michael Peña's in it. Even though I love Michael Peña, like, he's terrible in this movie. That's just, Rob Delaney's in it, and his character is kind of a nimwit the entire time. Like, every character in this movie is stupid in so many different ways. I don't know. I found it infuriating, to be honest with you. But I don't think the movie's horrendous. I don't think it's the worst thing. I know Chris Stuckman gave it like an F on his review, which, I mean, I don't understand that, I guess. But it is what it is. It's film. Film is subjective, and you know, it's gonna work for some people. I mean, if you have kids and they want to be entertained for an hour and a half, then put them in front of the TV and have them watch this, because I feel like they'll be entertained, but it just didn't work for me. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Tom and Jerry. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie down below in the comment section of this video, and let's move on to the next movie. The next movie that I want to talk about is Judas and the Black Messiah. This movie came out on HBO Max as well in theaters at the exact same time. This movie stars Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield. When offered a plea deal from the FBI, William O'Neill takes it, and he is in charge of trying to gather information and intelligence to the FBI on the whereabouts of the Black Panther chairman in Chicago, Illinois, Fred Hampton. I did not know much about the Black Panther Party or this movement that the movie takes place in and is centered around, and I gotta say, I was captivated. This is a movie that really plays well on its strengths. It knows exactly how to hit the right moments at the exact right times. And Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield give incredible performances, but Daniel Kaluuya really is the standout in this movie. I think it's safe to say that he's probably the favorite to win Best Supporting Actor, and he should. I mean, he gives such an incredible performance as Fred Hampton. It's captivating. You believe every single word he utters in this movie, and honestly, it's one of the best performances I've seen on screen in at least probably the past 5 years. I think also another thing that's very interesting about this movie is that this movie never lost its pacing. It continually had this really nice, beautiful pacing to it, and I was always fascinated in where the story was going next. Again, I didn't know anything about the characters. I did know a little bit about Fred Hampton, like I've heard of him before, but I didn't know exactly to the extent of what this character would mean and who this person was as a revolutionary and as a leader to this party group. And it's really such a beautiful story, and Shaka King, who directed this movie, did such an incredible job, and I was very surprised to see that this is one of his first films. Like, he did a film before this, but it was like a comedy, like a stoner comedy, and this movie's like completely different. And I think that this guy really has a future in Hollywood, because this movie felt at times like a Spike Lee joint, but at the same time, it also was its own thing and it had its own identity. And that's because it was a very dramatic movie. It was never over the top. It never hit for humor. It knew exactly what it needed to do and what it needed to be in order to completely encapsulate this era of time and this story. I liked the ensemble. I thought the entire cast did a really good job. Jesse Plemons is really an incredible actor, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do in the new Martin Scorsese film, because he has now the lead role in that movie, and he did such an incredible job along this cast. He reminds me of Matt Damon a lot. I know a lot of people have said that he's like Matt Damon. It's kind of funny because he really is. He sounds just like Matt Damon. His acting prowess is very similar to Matt Damon. Even his mannerisms are very similar to Matt Damon. So I thought that was very interesting. But overall, like, this movie is really, really great. Probably the best movie I've seen in the past year, because, well, 2020 it left a lot to be desired, and I can't really find anything I didn't like about this movie. I feel like it's a movie that I'll definitely go back and revisit. Probably own it on Blu-ray behind this shelf right here. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Judas and the Black Messiah, a fantastic movie that you definitely need to check out, either in the theater if you can, or on HBO Max until March 14th, I think you have. So make sure you guys go check it out. And let's move on to the final movie of this video. The last movie that I want to talk about is I Care a Lot. This movie stars Rosamund Pike, and she is a guardian, a legal guardian to these older people, and she's conning them basically by taking their money, and she ends up being in the care of someone who is very dangerous, and her son Peter Dinklage's character is trying to find her and really kill her, in a sense. This is a movie that is kind of confusing to me because it plays off the strengths of two things, where it tries to be dramatic, and then it also tries to kind of have espionage and thriller vibes mixed in. And to me, I thought that this movie, number one, it looked beautiful. It's a very beautiful and immaculate movie to look at. I thought, the color palettes were used extremely well. And the performances are also really good from Rosamund Pike and Peter Dinklage, who I absolutely love. You guys know I love Tyrion Lannister. But unfortunately, those things couldn't save the movie for me. I felt like this movie just kind of had pacing issues throughout the film, and it tried switching to be more of a thriller film at the second half of the movie, and it's not nearly as effective as the first half, which is all the setup. Also, Rosamund Pike's character, I absolutely hated her, and there's no redemption to her character, really. The way her story ends makes sense, but I also hate parts of what happens at the end, and I will kind of divulge that a little bit. We will be talking about spoilers a bit because I really feel like I have to at this point. There's no characters that you can really root behind. They're all pretty much horrible human beings. But I loved rooting for Peter Dinklage's character just because I love Peter Dinklage a lot. And Rosamund Pike, she's an incredible actress, but everything I've seen her in, she scares the absolute crap out of me. So she's got that going for her, man. Let's talk a little bit about the spoilers here and the ending of the movie. There's a part of this movie where Rosamund Pike seeks vengeance for almost being killed by Peter Dinklage's character, and so she puts matters into her own hands. Basically, she feeds him a bunch of drugs, and then he ends up becoming heavily sedated. He gets admitted to the hospital, and she becomes his legal guardian. That made sense to me. I was okay with all of that, until Peter Dinklage's character decides to go into business with Marla, played by Rosamund Pike, and they make billions of dollars and they continue to be horrible people. I hated that. That to me seemed like the writers didn't know what they were doing or what to do to close out this story. Eventually Marla dies, which is good because that's exactly what the setup of this movie was calling for, because she's such a terrible human being, and especially because the beginning sequence of this film starts off with her really just being a complete liar in a sense, and just really not a good person. But I hated this whole idea of them being in business together. I thought that was really stupid. It was a cop-out, and to me it really ruined the movie for me, if I'm going to be completely honest. I can't take the ending of this film and just erase it from my mind. That ending completely derailed this movie for me. I really don't know how I feel about it. It's a movie that I I'm happy I saw, because Rosamund Pike gives a great performance. Do I think she's going to get nominated at the Oscars? No, because where is there room for her at this point? But I'm very disappointed in the way that this movie ends. And to me, I was really interested and intrigued with what this movie was offering me. But the moment that twist happens, the turn happens, the movie really just lost my interest completely. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on I Care a Lot. What did you guys think about this movie? Let me know down below in the comment section of this video. And that's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a great month, and I'm looking forward to March because we have movies like Justice League, the Snyder Cut. We got Godzilla vs. Kong, and many more. So I'm very much looking forward to what this month will bring. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, consider subscribing to the channel for more content just like this. And as always, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.